welcome everybody. Today, as I just mentioned, is already the 8th webinar in a row of this series of webinars titled How To, and it mostly focuses on different topics within the framework of circular design and sustainability. And today's webinar is titled Design for Repair, which we will jump into in a second. Before, just a couple of maybe a timeline or technical details. We will be here today with our lovely speakers for an hour and a half, approximately. And each speaker will have around 20 minutes of time to introduce themselves and what they do. I will introduce them in a second. And then in the end, I'd like to really encourage you and invite you all to have a sort of a discussion, a very open discussion where you can ask questions. Even would be great if you know some great examples or role models in this field that you know of, or any other comments. We'll have an allocated time for that in the end, and hopefully there'll be even more of you guys once we get to that point. But my name is Kristiin Peterson. I'm fully Estonian, although a bit of with a Swedish type of a name. But I work at the Estonian Academy of Arts, actually, as a project manager at the Sustainable Design and Material Lab. And I'm a textile designer, and more specifically a knit designer myself. I'm very interested in the world of textiles and circular design within the field of textiles and fashion. But today here we have very, very exciting speakers who actually all of them have, I think, many or multiple things in common, but maybe the most important thing in common is that they all work for making our lives and the environment that we live in a better place, step by step, by advocating circular design and production, and mainly from the perspective of repairing, upcycling, and reusing. All of these words which are fairly common to all of us nowadays, but they still seem sometimes even impossibly difficult to incorporate in all of those different industries, large scale production units, and etc. Still, there are brands and companies out there nowadays who do know how to make a change and fight against the mainstream, and we will be talking about some of them in a second. The very often repeated and cited claim is that 80% of the product's environmental impact over its life cycle is determined in the design phase. And this is also the reason why we all focus on the topic of repair from the design perspective here today as well. As mentioned, you are most welcome to join in and ask questions. You can type them in here in the chat box. I will try to keep an eye on them, and I will make sure that all of the questions will be answered in the end. But enough about the bubbly talk. Let's get into business. Our first speaker today, I will give a short, maybe an introduction first to all of the three speakers, and then give the floor to Eliina. But Eliina Brinkberg is joining us here today from Nudie jeans, a brand which I've been actually a huge fan of for a couple of years now, or actually many years. Really admire what they do. She is the environmental manager at Nudie jeans, and she has a background actually in business and environmental science and global studies. And she's been working with the brand since 2013, and since the last around 6 years. She's been working as the environmental manager, focusing on sustainable raw material use and fabric production, as well as exploring possibilities in closing the loop by reusing and recycling. She's also responsible for the climate work in Nudie and mapping all the emissions and building roadmaps and etc. We'll hear about it in a second. And second one in a row is Elizabeth, who is joining today from the States. So she just mentioned it's around 5 a.m. in the morning for her, so quite early. She is a director of sustainability at iFixit, which is a repair website with over, believe it or not, but 18,000 guides for how to fix everything, from, as was written in the little bio, it had a little bit of a laugh, but from your toaster to your tractor, so basically everything. She will talk about how repairing itself is actually not a rocket science, but could be quite something easy to do for all of us. And then last but not least, we have Jiří. He will be joining us today with us from Tartu. Actually, I'm not sure. I think he's in Tartu at the moment, but I know the communal space and a company that he is working for called Paranduskelder. Maybe he will correct me in a second, but I think the direct translation is seller of repair or repairing seller. But that place is located in Tartu. He will talk about repairing and upcycling and do-it-yourself activities and all of the things that they do there. But Eliina, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. And thank you for that presentation. I don't have so much to add about myself, but my name is Eliina, and thank you so much for having me on today. It's great to be able to speak about what we do in these different kind of forums, to reach out to all of you guys. And yeah, so thank you for having me on. I couldn't share my screen, but I think that you can start to share my presentation on your side, and then we can just jump right into it. Yeah, so I'm from Nudie, and on my 20 minutes now, I will just quickly talk a little bit about who we are, what we do, but then jump into our circular activities and the repairs, among other things that we are working with. So we can move on to the next slide. So Nudie is a Swedish company. It was based in 2001 in Gothenburg, where I am right now, and it was founded by Maria Eriksson Levin. And she was at that time actually working as a designer at another big denim brand, but she had a vision that she wanted to start her own brand, and she wanted to do that with the ideas that she wanted to make a good quality product that was made under fair working conditions and made in a sustainable fiber. So for us, that means organic cotton. So that is the sort of the idea of why Nudie started. And she started the company together with Joachim Levin and Palle Stenberg, and it's still privately owned by these three people. We have our head office here in Gothenburg, and I think we're actually over 100 employees today working in the office. And we try to keep everything in-house. So we do everything ourselves, from the design to product development, logistic, finance, and all of the sort of normal stuff, but we also have our own photographers, we have our own architecture for our stores, and we have our own production bureau for all of our communication material and so on. So we really try to make everything in-house. And we have over 35 repair shops globally, and repair shops is actually what we call our normal stores and shops. We also have our online shop that sells globally, and you can find Nudie in more than 1,000 multi-brand retailers worldwide. So we have quite a large spread globally. And we've been working with organic cotton in all of our denim since 2012. And we can go to the next slide. Yeah, and this is a map of where you can find us and where we are in the world. So the orange dots are where we have our repair shops, and the black dots is where we have repair partners. And repair partners are actually wholesalers, so independent retailer stores that offer the same kind of services that we do in our stores. So you can have your Nudie jeans repaired for free. You can turn in your old Nudie jeans and get a bit of a discount on a new pair, and you can buy secondhand Nudie jeans. And we have started to work with these repair partners because we wanted to reach even more people. If you aren't living close to one of our stores, you might be living close to our repair partners. We are also sending out these repair kits online for free. So if you live and you don't have the possibility to turn in your jeans somewhere where we do the repairs, you can actually sort of order a repair kit and do it yourself at home. And the blue dots on this map is where we have our production. And these are marked on this map is our tier 1 supplier. So that's our main supplier, the production suppliers. So we have production in Sweden, in Lithuania, in Poland, Portugal, Italy, Tunisia, Turkey, and India. And the majority of our denim fabrics are made in Turkey, Italy, and Japan. And the organic cotton that we are working with is from Turkey and India. So we're quite strict when it comes to where in the world we are producing and together with which suppliers. So we try to keep our supplier base very tight. And if we're going to work with a new supplier, we are very careful with choosing the right suppliers from the beginning, and we develop together with them. And also when it comes to moving into a new production country, we don't do that if it's not really necessary, because we have made quite a thorough risk analysis and we have an organizational setup so we can have control and visit our suppliers and so on. So we try to stay in the countries where we already have production. We can go on to the next slide. And this is an overview of Nudie Jeans' value chain, and it's also quite a good overview of the textile processes that are included in our production. And when we talk about sustainability and that we try to be a sustainable company, we actually mean that we take responsibility in each of these steps in the supply chain. We think it's super important to have full traceability of all of our products, of all of the fibers that we are working with. So when it comes to raw material production, we are only working with organic cotton, for example. We know which organic suppliers that we are working with, we know where the cotton is grown. When it comes to fabric production and garment manufacturing, we're working long term with our suppliers. We have suppliers that we've been working with for over 10 years, and we develop with them. And this long-term relationship also builds the trust that we need to have with our suppliers, where we can actually discuss quite difficult subjects such as wage levels or overtime and so on. And we need to trust the suppliers that they raise the issue with us. And they need to trust us that we are not just leaving them to work with another supplier, but that we actually develop together and try to find solutions together. And we've also in this picture included our services, so the repair, the take back, and the reuse and the recycle activities that we work with. But we've also included the user phase, and that sort of represent the customers, because we are in a way dependent on that our customers know about the services that we offer, but also are part of this circular business that we try to build, where they actually bring back their garment to our stores so that we can use them. So we are dependent on the customers, but of course it's also our responsibility to make products that people want to repair and want to use for a long time. So that's where our concept of more of a timeless design comes in, and where we are really trying to make the garments that people keep in the wardrobe and are not just using for a trendy period and then throw them away, but really to have the garment that people want to use for a long time. And we can move to the next slide. Yeah, and when it comes to our products, we used to say that it all starts with a pair of dries. And you can click on to the next, because these are quite quick slides I have here. But these are actually the the sort of the process of using your jeans in the way that we think is the best way to use them. So the first one here is the jeans that is never washed. And then you have the second jeans in the middle, and you can click onto the next slide. It's used for 11 months before the first wash, and we recommend our customers to use their jeans at least 6 months before the first wash. And then we have the last one, and you can click onto the next slide. Yeah, that's after the first wash. And the idea here is that using your jeans for a long time before the first wash really makes these personal wears and tears. And what we really think is beautiful about this process is that your jeans almost become like a map of the life that you live in them, because you get a pair of jeans that looks like no one else's. And we really think this is a nice, or the magic of working with denim and with indigo is that you have this process where you wear them in. And another good thing about not washing your garments too often is, of course, that we save water and energy, and we all know that that is really, really important. And we can go on to the next slide. Yeah, and this is actually a picture from one of our stores here in Gothenburg and the repair station, because we do offer repairs in all of our stores. And one very nice aspect of this repair service, on top of that, of course, we do repair people's garments and they can use them for a longer time, is that it's the normal sales staff that we have in our stores that also do the repairs. So when you start to work in one of our shops, you also learn to do the repairs. And we've also realized now, doing this for quite so many years, is that it really sort of rubs up on the staff in a store. They get really engaged and knowledgeable when it comes to the products. They know all about the different qualities of different jeans, because they are actually working with them hands-on. So we really see that as a positive aspect of having this repair service as well. It makes our staff really engaged in the products that they are selling. And we also realized that this is a great conversation starter with the customers, because the sewing machines always have quite a central part in the store. And it's quite an easy way to start to talk to the customers about our repair service, about the importance of using your garment for a long time, that if they don't want them anymore, they can come back to the store and give them back to us and so on. So it really makes it much easier to get that conversation started with the customers when they come into our stores. Then we can move on to the next slide. Yeah, and in 2021, so last year, we repaired 42,500 pair of jeans. And that is actually decreasing a little bit from the year before, because we, due to the pandemic, had to close a few of our stores in periods last year. So normally we tend to repair a bit more jeans, and the demand is just growing and growing. So right now we are struggling a little bit to keep the waiting time down, because we have a lot of people who wants to have their jeans repaired, which is great, of course. And we can move on. Yeah, and we also have the take back scheme. So if you don't want to have your Nudie jeans anymore, you can turn them in to one of our stores and you get 20% discount on a new pair. And we have this discount because we want to motivate our customers to turn back their jeans to us or give them back to us. But it's also, of course, a valuable resource for us, because the jeans that we do collect in the stores, we use them for different purposes. Either we cut them up and use the fabric as patches for, to be used in the repair service, or we repair them and wash them and sell them again as secondhand, or we save them to different kind of recycling projects. And we can go to the next slide. And in the last year, we collected 13,919 pairs. And this is actually an increase compared to the year before. And we believe that this is the case because we have really talked more about this possibility. So when customers know this, they actually do it as well. So that's great. And we can move on to the next slide. Yeah, and as I mentioned, we sell secondhand jeans, or the reused jeans, as we call them. And we do this both in our stores and at our repair partners. So that's quite a local small circle. When you turn in your jeans in the store, it's often in the same store that they are sold again. But we also do have a more central handling of the jeans, and we sell the jeans also online. And then we have more curated drops, and that's around like 4 to 5 times a year. We make small drops in our web shop. And if you go on to the next slide, we also realize that these are selling out quite quickly, just in a couple of days. So this is great to see that people want to buy secondhand Nudie jeans. So we're very happy about that. And we can move on to the next slide. Yeah, and in the last year, we sold 2,273 pairs of secondhand jeans or reused jeans. And this number is quite stable. And of course, we want to see a growth in these numbers, but it's also very much dependent on the jeans that we receive back to us. So that's why we think it's so important to receive more jeans in our stores, because then we increase the possibility of actually selling more jeans as well. And that's a little bit of a challenge today. And we are also making other projects out of our old Nudie jeans. So we have made hats and backpacks, as we can see on this picture. And if we move on to the next slide, we've also made a project where we made rags out of old Nudie jeans. And this was a really nice project, actually. We can click on to the next slide. I have some quick slides here. But this is a better view of how the product actually looks like in the end. I think this is a great example of an upcycled product where we have a lot of jeans that no one wants anymore, but in the end we make a rag that someone else has had in their living room for many, many years. So I love this project. We sold, I think we sold all of them. We didn't do that many, but they were a great project we did. And we are also working with different kind of recycling. This was more of a reuse. But if we move on to the next slide, I think we have the blanket that we actually made in Australia, because we do have a lot of Nudie jean stores in Australia, and they are also collecting Nudie jeans. And instead of sending them to Sweden or to Europe, we actually found a collaboration in Australia with a mill that was normally working with recycled wool. So we made this blanket out of recycled denim and recycled wool, and we sold them again. And then we have in the next slide another recycling project that we did back in 2019, where we used post-consumer Nudie jeans, so jeans that we had collected in the stores. We sent them to Turkey to one of our normal fabric suppliers. They shredded them down, blended it up with 79% organic cotton, where we have this 20% recycled cotton and 1% elastane. And we did a new denim fabric that we did a small collection called Rebirth out of. We did jeans and jeans jacket with this fabric. And this was really sort of the start again of working with recycled jeans into new fabric, because after that we also started the next project that we still have running today, that you can see on the next slide, where we actually use the second choice jeans from one of our largest manufacturer based in Tunisia, where they take the jeans that are sorted out in the quality check. They send that to a fabric supplier also based in Tunisia, and they shred it down and mix it with organic cotton and make a new fabric out of. And this started off as a pilot project we did together with UNIDO, so the United Nations Industry Development Organization. They had a larger study going on in Tunisia and Morocco, looking at the different recycling flows. So we sort of were part of that study, but then this work has continued since, and I think we have made 4 production batches now with 20,000 meters of new fabrics. So this is a running project that we have that is quite successful. And yeah, that was a quick run through of everything that we do. And I just want to say that it is possible, even though we are a company earning money selling product, but we can do this in a more sustainable way. And we want to teach and learn our users and consumers that it is possible to be more sustainable when you're buying garments. Thank you.
Thank you. You most definitely are a huge role model in that sense and in that field. Maybe a quick one before we go on to the next speaker. Peter has asked, are the reused jeans labeled, branded differently? So when you buy one, so it is...
It's the same. If it's just like repaired and washed, so it's secondhand, we have a small, of course, hang tag in the store where it says that it's a secondhand jeans, and we have a certain or a special place in the store where you find them, but they are not relabeled in any way, so they look normal. Yeah,
I was wondering, because you said about had a limited drop, so I was wondering if that could even be like a unique selling point if you would brand it differently. So when you buy one, it's more special in a way. But yeah,
that is a good idea. But I don't think, if I'm not wrong, that we haven't done it yet. Okay. I know that the more curated drops in the web shop sometimes do like special repairs on them, or salvage or special quality, and then I'm not sure if maybe they are numbered, but it's a good idea.
And I also completely agree that the brand in Australia was really popular, and I was actually surprised when I heard that it's from Europe also when I moved back from there. But we'll come back, I'm sure, with lots of other questions in the end from the textiles, actually from the world of jeans, straight to the world of more into the technology field. I give the floor over to Elizabeth, who will tell more about the iFixit platform and everything that they do and what they advocate for.
Great, thank you, Maria. And Eliina, your presentation was so fascinating. I'm really inspired and impressed by the work that you're doing. Can you all see my screen okay? Oh, good. Okay, wonderful. So I'm Liz Chamberlain. I'm Director of Sustainability at iFixit. iFixit is the free repair manual, and as Maria said, we've got 86,409 free repair guides as of this morning for how to fix everything from your toaster to your tractor. We're best known for our thorough step-by-step repair documentation, especially for electronics. And we started in 2003 when our co-founder Kyle, this is Kyle around that time, when he was in college and broke his iBook. He dropped it off his dorm room bed and it landed on the power cable and bent the port. And he couldn't find the parts, tools, and guides that he needed to fix it. So he wrote his own manual with his friends. They took apart his computer and figured it out and put it back together, and they put that manual online. And this, the Pismo PowerBook G3 repair manual, was one of the first that iFixit put online. And when he put it there, he found that there were a lot of people online who'd been annoyed by the same thing, that every other PC on the market at the time was meant to be worked on. You could repair it. You could repair it at home. You could upgrade it yourself. Apple thought different. And in this case, they thought different in a really frustrating way by making repair more difficult. Eventually, to fund the project, Kyle and his friends started taking apart used Apple devices and selling their parts. By restricting repair, Apple had created a market, and iFixit started to fill it. iFixit started taking apart new devices as they came out, sharing pictures of those devices online, of their innards. Back in the late aughts and early 10s, these teardowns won us some internet fame. We get hundreds of thousands of eyeballs on these teardowns in the first few days. People wanted to know what was inside gadgets. As time has gone on, there's been less appetite for that sort of thing. I think, probably honestly in a good way for the world, in that, people are less surprised by what's coming in electronics, but also less sort of, rapidly waiting for things. But back in the early aughts, early 10s, we tried to be the first to get new electronics so we could take them apart to show off their guts to the world. So this is our other co-founder, Luke, waiting outside an Apple store in Australia in 2010, be one of the first people in the world to get an iPod. In these teardowns, we talked through what made things more or less repairable. We especially focused on how difficult it was to get at batteries and screens. Batteries, of course, are consumable. They need replacing every 1 to 3 years. And screens are often the most likely to break component of a device. So we asked manufacturers to consider these things in their designs to make battery and screen replacements prioritize. Eventually, we started giving repairability scores out of 10 to electronics, calculating how long it took to take the devices apart We looked at things like whether they used industrial adhesives or proprietary screws to keep people out, looked at how well they prioritize battery and screen repairs. For a long time, it felt like we were screaming into the void. But then, and this is jumping many years, then manufacturers actually started coming to us asking if we could help them make their products more repairable. So today we're working with Google, Samsung, and Valve, among others, to provide parts and guides for some of their products and give them repairability assessments of the products that they're creating. And we're advocating for right to repair laws and more repairable regulations around the world. And I don't think those two things are an accident. I think manufacturers are coming to us in part because we're pushing so hard for this kind of legislation. I imagine that many of you have heard about this legislation or have encountered it in some way, but I'll briefly go through some of the greatest hits. One of the most exciting pieces of legislation is in France. Manufacturers now have to publicly display a repairability score on a product at the point of sale, and that's online or in person. That score is calculated via publicly documented process. Manufacturers do, contribute their own evaluations as part of it. But it's the most robust, largest scale repairability scoring system that we've ever had. And consumers are taking account of it. They, even within the first few months after the scoring system was released, most French consumers had heard of it. And most French consumers said that they were using the score to help them make more repairable decisions at the point of sale. There are also a set of eco-design regulations in the EU, as I bet most of you know, requiring that many kinds of home appliances have parts and documentation available for the repair of their products. New York, the state, and the US recently passed an electronics right to repair bill that will guarantee basically the same thing for electronics manufacturers. India, Chile, New Zealand, all considering legislation, all kinds of interesting things happening all around the world. And exciting for us, almost 20 years after we first started asking them, Apple has finally changed their tune and are selling parts for the iPhone and M1 MacBooks now, just in the US, hopefully elsewhere to come. And of course, this is exciting, but we don't doubt that they're trying to get ahead of the regulations coming down the pipeline. They're trying to make sure that they're ready when they are required to do this, which hopefully will be soon. In those nearly 20 years digging into electronics, helping manufacturers learn how to make them more repairable, we've learned a lot. For instance, electronics manufacturers are using adhesive everywhere these days. It makes repair a real bear. It's hard to pry things off. We end up doing a lot of heating from different places in the device. We've got different devices for applying heat. We use solvents. We squirt them in underneath components to loosen the solvents, or excuse me, loosen the adhesive. And then a lot of prying, a lot of getting in there with tools and prying pieces out. Thankfully, we are seeing more and more stretch release adhesive, which works like command strips. If you've ever used those for hanging hooks on your wall, you pull at it until it reaches a tensile point where it becomes less adhesive and pulls out. It's definitely better than the other kind of adhesive. We're always happier to see it in a device than the stuff you've got to use heat and solvents to get past. But it does change as it gets older. It gets brittle as it gets old. And so it's more likely to snap over time. And when that happens, it can be just as bad as the trickier stuff. Another repair restriction, sometimes the manufacturers are even more blatant about trying to keep you out. So iPhones and MacBooks use this proprietary star-shaped screw called the pentalobe. We sent this design to some of our tool manufacturers and asked if they could figure it out, and they did. But until that point, nobody but Apple repair techs had this tool. You could kind of jam other tools in there and get it out, but it almost inevitably stripped, meaning that you get inside your device once and never again. Surprisingly, it gets even more blatant than that. The Microsoft Surface laptop, this was in 2017, had a felt cover that you literally had to cut open to get into. And under the felt, it's got weld spots. So each one of these things is a spot weld. You have to totally destroy it to get inside. And thankfully, Microsoft has changed their design of the surface a lot, and as we've been working with them, this is one of the things we've spent a lot of time with, and the design has improved dramatically on our repairability score. But this was, I believe, the first time we'd given a 0 to a laptop for repairability, in that in order to get inside it, you literally had to destroy it, which is not acceptable for something that has a battery that will die within 1 to 3 years, will need to be changed. Of course, as Maria pointed out, there are companies that are doing better things in the electronic space, even, you know, not quite as great as Nudie Jeans maybe, but best counterexample is probably the Fairphone, which is designed to be repairable. They actually don't work on US carriers, so I first saw one a few weeks ago for the first time. I encountered it in our office, and I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it's a pretty impressive phone in that you can open the back, take the battery out with your thumbnail. A lot of the most common repairs you can do without any tools at all. The same is true of the Framework laptop, which has a bezel that comes off by hand, which reveals the few small screws in here that you need to change the display. So the Fairphone and the Framework do the most important thing in repairable electronics design in our minds. They prioritize being able to remove the consumable battery and the most often broken components like the screen or the ports in the case of the Framework. In talking with electronics designers, we've learned that the biggest challenge generally isn't helping them see what's repairable or convincing them even to use modular design. Product designers are used to thinking about things in components. They're used to thinking about the pieces that make up the things they're making. They're used to seeing things in exploded views. And they know that mechanics have exploded diagrams up on their walls, not just because they look cool. Designers get modular design intuitively. They get that in order to have something that's repairable, you need to have pieces that can be changed in and out. That means, of course, for the most part, they get repairable design intuitively. The real challenge is to get designers to prioritize that aspect of that design and to keep that priority in focus throughout the design process. Because of course, there are many, many things that go into designing a product, and we know repair isn't always the only thing you're thinking about. So most often our repair analyses serve as a reminder of a user designers haven't been designing for. So not the user opening the box for the first time or being amazed by the capacity of the technology, not the user that's integrating the product into their lives. Our call to designers is don't forget the user that needs to make your thing work again. People like these teenagers repairing a speaker on the side of our deli road. That means thinking about the ways it can break and not just hanging your hat on durability, because even the most durable thing will eventually fail. Our co-founder says that he's always fighting against the inevitable destruction of the planet. So it means thinking about how to make your widget be as useful to as many people as it possibly can be before it gets recycled. This is key, of course, to the circular economy, which theme of this webinar. How long can we keep that thing on user? So both, how long can it spend in its first life cycle and how many users can it have? So there's one really simple design principle that makes remembering that easy. It's modularity. It is simple, but of course it is also rocket science. When the first Falcon 9, the reusable SpaceX rocket, landed again in 2015 for the first time, I watched along with the rest of the world in amazement. First, of course, it's freaking cool to see a rocket's launch system re-land, ready to be reused again. And as an iFixit person, I was also excited about the way it showed off the benefits of modularity. By separating this reusable bit from the part actually going to space, they could save resources, materials. Not that spacecraft is the most environmentally friendly piece of engineering, but if we're going to do it, we should at least be doing it reusably. But of course, this wasn't the first modular spacecraft, not by far. In fact, spacecraft have been using modular design from long before spacecraft even actually existed. People were imagining modular spacecraft systems. Russian space station Mir was assembled in space from 1986 to 1996 in a bunch of these different modules, which again makes it easier to assemble in space, makes it easier to fix when things go wrong. Space Shuttle did the reusable spacecraft thing also a long time previously. And the ISS is composed of a bunch of modules too, including, and I had to show this to you, this Canadian design module called Dexter. That's a a robotic arm for replacing batteries. So the space station is well prepared for the reality that batteries are consumables that need to be changed. There's a robot that does that is itself a module. So modular design, repairable design is literally rocket science. And it makes sense. It makes sense when you've got teams from around the world collaborating on a project. It lets you set the boundaries of each project really clearly. And even on the Artemis 1 mission, which will hopefully actually go out in a few weeks, most of the systems were designed modularly. And an Estonian company actually made some cameras that will watch a robotic arm on the lander. And working modularly allows different teams from around the world to collaborate that way. But unfortunately, of course, the Falcon 9 landing didn't change everything in spacecraft design. Artemis 1, for the most part, won't be reusable. And that's part of why I called this talk Repairable Design Isn't Rocket Scientists. Isn't rocket science. Rocket scientists have to prioritize some things other than repairable design, things like actually achieving escape velocity and getting people back safe. And so I accept that when it comes to shooting explodey things up out of our atmosphere, repairable doesn't always make the top of the design priority list. And knowing how expensive rockets are, I trust that as it becomes more and more technologically feasible to reuse parts of them, more of their designs will incorporate that. But the vast majority of products designed in the world don't have the same kind of life or death pressures. And there are all kinds of great social reasons to keep repair in mind for other things that we're making. Every country has people who need access to technology to be able to participate in society, and a healthy stream of lower cost secondhand devices helps us close that digital divide. Plus, every day, the world generates e-waste that weighs as much as 100 blue whales. One of those facts that every time I see it makes me a little sadder. And just 12.5% of that globally is being recycled. We can't keep this up. The planet won't support it. But of course, the solution doesn't lie in the hands of rocket scientists or surgeons or tech billionaires. It lies in the hands of designers who stick to simple principles like the idea of modularity, like prioritizing repair of the most important components. Sometimes other voices in the room will be loud, other needs in the room will be loud, but my challenge to all of you as product designers, is to push for repairability, even when it's difficult, even when it seems futile. It's not rocket science, but it is vital to the future of our planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Wow. You mentioned that Eliina had a quick presentation. You were really speaking fast, but that was very interesting to follow, and lots of interesting facts. And you are really a front runner especially in the light of the new EU legislations and policy framework, where they really focus on how to make things, how to give the users the right for repair, as they have loudly put it out there. Let's see what their next steps are for the future, and how we get on to that train, hopefully, and fingers crossed. But we will get back to questions. I'm sure there's many of them. I know at least I have a couple at least. But Jiří, I give the floor to you. Just a couple of words. So the ones who joined with us a bit later, Jiří is running a community space called Paranduskelder in Estonian. I violently translate it as a repairing seller, or seller for repair in English, but it's based in Tartu, in a bit of a smaller city in Estonia than Tallinn. But they have been doing it for quite many years, and they are really much focusing on do-it-yourself activities and giving workshops on topics of repair, and offering a space for repairing things. I give the floor to you. Enough about
Right.
studying.
Hello, it's cool to be here. I think I've put some name or some sort of title to my talk, but today I went through the notes and figured that it might not meet the target. I think I was about to talk about something. What if everything would be repairable? I think there are many touch points on what just Liz was talking about. Right. Because like our organization, Paranduskelder, by the way, we really do not try to translate it because it always somehow ends up so, like somehow it doesn't really work. Fun fact, the cellar, we started in a cellar, but now we are in this very fancy, very well lit, spacious space. But we kept the name because we thought it's kind of funny to keep it so. But anyways, right. From the as an organization, we are a public repair space, and now I don't know really. Maybe we sort of invented the term, but right, a public or a community repair space. And in this sense, we really operate on the other side of the design, right? We deal with the bad, with the crappy design every day, and especially everyday things, not just electronics, right? But all the things that nobody else would really bother to repair, you know, toys, umbrellas, etc. And like when we started the organization, we really didn't have a physical space, but we had this sort of idea that we were sort of like angry at the system, you know, young angry people at the system. But what really bothered us is the sort of cost paradox of repair versus buying a new thing. Because like nowadays with many things, with these everyday objects, you reach this cost paradox where buying a new thing is more reasonable than repairing, like price wise. It's as expensive or maybe just a little bit less expensive than buying a new thing. And yeah, right. I mean, especially with things like umbrellas, if umbrella was 15 euros and somebody would have to spend 2 hours fixing it, and how much they would have to charge you, you know, to pay their salary and to pay the rent and all the extra costs that go to the business. And so we started to throw these repair cafes, which is very well, I think it's well functioning format. I think it was originally from the Netherlands, where it's a community event. You throw a bunch of people who know how to repair things, and you invite people from the public. It's usually at some sort of venue like a cafe or a school or a pub, and then you just repair things and have a coffee and a piece of cake next to it. So it's kind of like, you know, people get together, and it's really cool. And then 3 years ago or so, we opened like a physical space, and the idea was that, like, how cool it would be if we would have this sort of like a public service of a repair open every day, or like on some specific days of the week. And we started to do it as a volunteers, just taking the shifts ourselves and provide the help to people. It didn't really work. Now we sort of figured it out, and it completely but it's not really sustainable design. It's a sustainable model because we completely depend on governmental funding. But the thing is that this funding now allows us to have 6 people on payroll that are here 3 times a week, and they so it's 2 people per shift, and it's thematical. So it's Tuesdays textile, Wednesday electronics, Thursday bikes and general repair. Right, that's the stuff that nobody otherwise would bother to repair. And if somebody from the public comes with their broken thing, it's all donation based. But the idea is that the person has to be actively or passively or somehow involved in the repairing process. So the idea from the governmental point of view, like I suppose why they give us the money this way, as the owner of the broken thing is there in the process, seeing why it broke and how to maybe fix it themselves, will learn, right, some sort of skills, but eventually will get to be a better or basically worst consumer. It depends on how you look at it. And so this is how we function. Now this is basically our everyday bread. But so if you imagine, and it really works, it works like really well. So now you could think, oh my God, this sort of thing, how cool it would be if it would be like in every neighborhood. You would have this sort of like a maker space, you know, we have all the tools, all the, you know, tables, space, some materials to work with, and then people just come and there is always someone to help you. Like this would be this would be perfect. But it's as we figured already from the very beginning, it's very not as a model on itself, it's not financially sustainable, and it always requires some sort of extra business model onto it. And so this is this for us, like it has been, and it's still the biggest challenge. And now till this day, basically the only people who are actually getting paid are the experts. In Estonian, it's a meistrid, the people who are actually helping the people, and then those of us who sort of run the organization get little or no money. So we always have to do something extra if we want to get paid. So this is a trouble. Now I'll put that aside and now talking about more how the vision, or like what is the end game goal with Paranduskelder, and how it fits to that sort of future that, for instance, iFixit or Nudie are working towards. And that's the ambition is to develop a sort of a circular center. I know that in Retuna, there's this sort of place, Retuna, and I don't know what is the name of the city, but it's in Sweden. They have this sort of model, and there are others, I think, all around not all around the globe. I think there is one in Seoul that already have this sort of model in place, where you have this sort of like a circularity or circular center, which consists of a waste management center, sort of like a second-hand shopping mall, and a high-end fab lab-like workshop where you have tools and machines and whatnot to repair, make, or manufacture almost anything yourself. And the idea is that basically it goes together with this sort of like a grand vision of a circular city, where the people will bring their things that they don't really need anymore, or just, you know, whatever sort of waste, and at the spot it's being sorted. So either it's something that kind of works, or it works, so it goes straight to the second-hand shop or a mall. If it needs repair, then there are people to do it, to refurbish it or to repair it. And then again, it goes back to the shop, or it's no longer it doesn't have sense to try to repair it. So it's being, and that's the tricky part, it's being dismantled to this basic materials that are then being reused on the spot. Like, to bring an example, we just got funding for this. Maybe some of you know this precious plastic movement. So we just got funding to run this, and this will basically allow us to put this already into work, like this aspect of like getting the local garbage, basically something that would be otherwise waste, and we reuse it here locally into something new. So basically we have these three basic machines. One is shredding, one is well, basically we shred the plastic into these granules, and then you reuse it depending on the machine. But in our case, we're going to have this sort of like, imagine big pizza oven and a hydraulic press. You put the granules there, and it presses it into a sheet, and like a square meter sheet of plastic. And then you can, you know, it's a great building material. You can do all sorts of kinds of things. In our case, we're gonna make like sort of yeah, whatever. Anyway, so this is just like a micro version of that end game big waste management center that would have some sort of capacity to recycle locally almost anything. Like, imagine how cool it would be to be able to, like, even in a micro scale, to recycle like stainless steel or something like that. But this is really future. But this is the idea, and this sort of like a circular center then, right? It really needs to really, if I'm the worker there, and somebody's gonna bring me, you know, whatever I have on my table, like a mouse, right? Okay, mouse is maybe mouse actually doesn't, let's say a computer monitor, which is just in front of me, like it consists of how many different sorts of materials, and if it's not anymore possible to repair it or doesn't have sense, then to dismantle it is a, well, that's a job, and especially dismantle it to the basic materials. There is all sorts of different kinds of plastic and rubber and glass and whatnot, and so there it really comes in. It's really important, and that's the same thing that this was describing, that the design would be as modular and as dismantleable as possible. Now, that's the vision, and luckily we now actually really start to work towards it, because Tallinn and Tartu now are together with the University of Technology of Tallinn. I don't know now what's the official name in English, but basically engineering school. There is this huge project where Tallinn and Tartu will be developing, but specifically Tallinn will be developing these sort of like a repair centers next to their waste management centers to apply this sort of model. So this is already working, and in Tartu, they want to go more our way, sort of in sort of more our way, where they want to open several like this sort of community repair or public repair spaces all around Tartu, and we're gonna help them to do it. So this is cool. Now, like if you then imagine now, if I go back to this, what we do daily now, one could say easily, all right, this is all nice, but you're still fighting windmills, right? Because we repair, if I repair this mouse, which by the way, it's from like Maxima, and maybe it was like €5, which is like the worst possible mouse, but it works because somebody fixed it. But right, you are fighting windmills because the manufacturers are still mostly doing crappy design, and this is leading nowhere. Well, what we have like figured with in this sort of bottom up like approach, what we figured how we deal with it, or what we do, what is our main contribution, is maybe in this sense similar to what iFixit does, but you guys mostly do different kinds of things, but you like empower the people to fix things themselves. I mean, like we provide them the environment and the sort of culture of repair. That's the thing. Like we want to like nourish the culture of repair, because we figured that that if you think that most probably in 50 years we're gonna either reach the ultimate modular illuminated circular society, or where you need to be a repairer. I mean, it's going to be like the mindset has to be there, because like this is what it's expected. If you can buy only €1,000 computer that just is there to stay and it needs to be repaired, then this is how it is. Or we're gonna in the next 50 years end up in some sort of Mad Max post-apocalyptic world where everything is scarce, and you also probably gonna need to know how to repair things. I mean, this is a bit anecdotal, but in a way, as it was said here before, right, the way of how we consume and manufacture things isn't sustainable. Like if it's not going to be sustained, then there might be a Mad Max like post-apocalyptic world where everybody needs to be a repairer as well. And so this to wrap it up, I mean, so this problem of mass consumption, mass production, all this machine, to solve it, right, we need to attack it from all the different sides, from the top down in the form of policies and you know, as the French example, which is really good, or like, yeah, have like standards, like you are not allowed to manufacture something that doesn't last longer than 5-10 years. And like if somebody's gonna squeak about like a free market and I can design whatever, I mean, it's sort of the same thing as this, you are not allowed to manufacture a car without a seatbelt, I believe. So like they're implying this sort of like a standards from the top down, then from the business side, right, that they're gonna do it either from common sense or like enforced by the policies, and from the bottom up by really like preparing for the new normal, which should be repair. Yeah, so this is sort of our way to it. By the way, which is a maybe fun thing to end with, talking about, because this is what we have been doing like last a year. There has been a lot of like politics involved in this, to push the city to give us more money so we could figure out how to make this circular center. And there was, before we knew about this project was on the way, and it's just such an interesting thing. as a sort of activist, or as I somehow happen to be in that role, to see like how in politics, right? You speak about this grand vision of the circular economy, and so on, and how everything is going to be repairable, etc. But that sort of model really doesn't need economic growth, and that's just such a fireball to throw that like nobody really wants to talk about this. That if we're gonna reach our goals, our like ambitious goals of having everything modular and repairable, then yeah, what's gonna happen with that? Anyways, that's yeah.
Thank you. I also added a website link here in the chat for those who might not speak Estonian fluently and don't know how to spell it, to check the Paranduskelder out on the website as well and what they do. I will give the floor to you, all the listeners out there as well, if you have any questions, but maybe to get the ball rolling, you mentioned that the initiative also needs to come from the bottom side, or in that sense that people need to be ready and sort of have a mindset that hopefully repairing things is the future, and then something that will be normalized, and it's something that we all know how to do. You work with you work directly in that field, and you see people coming in every day, and you've been doing that for many years now. Do you see there is a rise, a tendency rise, and how do you feel 2022? How ready are the people, even in the city of Tartu? Let's begin with that. If you don't know the outside of it, but how do you feel? What's your sense?
Well, I think it's hard to judge. We have very little, like a real data on that. So it's very hard to judge. I can't really say if there has been increase. I mean, we've been just doing better marketing, sort of like, that's why there is more people, right? And we have got really fancy rooms now on a busy street. That's why there are more people now. I mean, but I cannot really make the conclusion from that. Yeah, because I think like this is something that I never want to miss to mention, that right, like if you have to choose, and I'm now being a bit cynical, I mean, but I don't know, maybe it's just realistic, but like most of the people still, if you have to choose to buy a new phone, for instance, for $350, or repair your old one for 200, well, there is still some little existential void inside of you, you know. When you buy the new thing, it's gonna fill it just a little bit, for a week or two. So you still want to buy the new thing because you're gonna feel like, a new thing. It feels good to buy a new thing, and so, you know. And this is still, and even if you implement all sorts of regulations and policies, like the need or like the want to buy a new thing will be still there. And this is just like, what you're gonna do with that? And I mean, the new thing can be still, you know, secondhand. That's for sure. It works the same, I think. Maybe, but not maybe in tech. So it's hard. But I cannot really. So in this sense, I would be maybe a bit more like, if there is some sort of shift going on. Yeah, because the main people who come here are either students, illuminated young parents with their kids, or like this sort of age, like, you know, illuminated in this sense, they are like environmentally aware, or old people who are just, it's just the second nature for them. It's just normal thing they always did. So yeah.
I will give the word to Anna Maria in a second, but since we have a sort of a international little consortium of speakers here, also from Sweden and from the States. What is your perspective from Europe or from the States, Elizabeth? How do you feel? Are people getting more engaged? Are they more into repairing?
I think there are definitely some hopeful signs. People are keeping electronics for longer, and whether that's boredom with the new model every year cycle, or that there are smaller changes between models. You know, there are non-repair related reasons to explain that. But I do think there is a change to some extent in people's, you know, at least awareness of repair challenges presented by manufacturers, and some desire to fight back against that. You know, when iFixit started almost 20 years ago, people were not really aware, and we were informing people about Apple's repair restrictions. And now I only have to get through, I work for iFixit advocating for right to repair, and people say, oh, that's where Apple tries to keep you from fixing your stuff, right? And that's hopeful to me. It's a sign that things are changing, that you know, the average level of awareness of repair restrictions and desire to push back is rising. But I think it's true also that we have a long way to go, and the desire of the new and shiny is there, and it's big, and we haven't solved it yet.
Thank you. Eliina?
Well, I think, I mean, I do agree with everything that has been said so far as well. I mean, we can see that the demand for repairing their Nudie jeans is increasing, but it's also because we are talking more about it, and because we are opening more shops and we are working with more repair partners. So of course the availability is also increasing, and that makes people aware of it, and they come and get their jeans repaired. But I do hope that people also do it with the mindset of knowing that it takes a lot of resources to make new garments and to produce the cotton, and to sort of know or to understand all this. And I also think that maybe jeans is quite a good product to have repaired, because if you have actually worn in your jeans from a kind of stiff, uncomfortable pair to a very soft and nice fitting, you also have that love to the garment that you want to keep them, compared to, I don't know, a party dress that you might get bored of. So I think we are also working with the right kind of garment in that sense, that it is also sort of a emotional connection to the garment that we can really connect to and spin on when we are talking about repairs. That is of course very nice from our perspective, but I hope that people will, with time, and we can already see that today, want to repair their stuff more. But I'm also skeptical. There are also so much new things that are getting sold and thrown away all the time. So yeah, it's two sides of this.
Thanks. Anna Maria, you have a question.
Yes, hi. I do have at least two questions. I hope I can ask them in both. The first one I will drop directly to Eliina, but I can also write an email about it, because it's something I'm calling in from Gothenburg. I am Estonian, and I have reached out to your company before as well, connected with the repair kits, what you were giving out in the middle of pandemic. One thing what Nudie Jeans does is that you offer the free repair. That means, that sounds to my ears, that no one gets paid by the job. And I love that notion, because I see that happening in Europe like several times. And also I think Paranduskelder has been sometimes tiny bit having it as a problem. Of course, like people want to like, oh, let's have a voluntary time, let's fix it. But if we don't really talk about it also as a work, that someone has the knowledge, someone has maybe like rehearsed quite a long time to do the work, then we don't need to ask the someone from up to send money down for us to fix the things, but to make it as a job as every other. I can learn how to cut my own hair, but I will still be willing to pay for my hairdresser. So it's this difference, like why to call something as a free repair, and why not to put it out like we as a company are taking care of that you as a customer will get it for free. And as well as the other part is, does people need to do everything by themselves, or can they just consider that they will be constantly aware where to go to, who are the persons who do the repair, how to take the thing apart at least, and how to make it like when a tear, okay, sorry for switching between the themes, but if I tear apart a pair of jeans, it still continue becoming and staying as a denim, as a fabric, so it can be turned into something else, as well as plastic sometimes can be turned into something else. So, oh my God, was there even any question? Thank you for the
Quite
stage.
long.
But I can just answer to the, because I think you have a really valid point there about having a free repair or actually showing the value behind it. And we have discussed this internally, if we should start to take a cost for it, to actually sort of upvalue the work behind it. But I think as we've started off offering this as a free service, it's difficult today to change that. But it is a really interesting idea about that we need to upvalue the work of repairs. And I mean, if you go to, how do you say that in English? Skräddare. This is someone that can do repairs and re-sew garments. Of course, you need to pay for that. And that's super valid because that's difficult work and it's a difficult skill. So it is something that we do discuss internally. But as you said, what we could do, and that's a good idea, is instead of framing that in the way of saying we pay for this because we do, there is quite a large cost connected to having staff doing the repairs. But to make that clear that this is something that is valuable for us, but we as a company want to take that cost for you as a customer to be able to make it easier for you to continue to use your garments, for example. So it's a good idea for us to actually think about how we can frame it in that way to show that it's still a valuable work behind the repairs. But yeah, maybe I answered a tiny bit of your question.
Can I just jump into that a little bit, because this is something we have talked about. I know there are other hands out, but I just want to like maybe it will somehow. The thing is like why we in Paranduskelder, why we don't just charge people, right? And this is the same. I mean, I mentioned this in the beginning, like that you can have well-functioning with a business model mobile repair, right? It's a big business even, like you're publishing phones and mobiles, but like, yeah, with this like everyday things that is still, it just doesn't make sense. But it doesn't mean that the things shouldn't be repaired, right? That doesn't mean that the umbrella that was just 15 euros shouldn't be repaired, because there are just like bumzillion umbrellas in the dumps, right? And it's just like there has to be some sort of system to make it until then we transition to the world where you can buy only an umbrella that costs whatever 70 euros and it's guaranteed to last for I don't know how long, and it's made so that the repair, even though you don't do it yourself, the person who is going to do it is not going to spend 2 hours of doing it. It's going to be click click click. They're going to maybe probably 3D print the spare part right there, and it's just going to take, you know, whatever minutes to do it. So then it makes sense to repair it for some fee, or like, you know, or you can do it then yourself probably, but right. So that's it's tricky. Kerli, she just left, or she left. She's a professor of circular economy in some Danish fancy university. I don't know where, Copenhagen probably. She told me this, yeah, about this, that it's that there is this sort of like a crash between that we somehow still live in the linear economy model. I mean, it sounds too simple and stupid, but this is just exactly how it is. Then there is still the linear model, and we are now trying to implement something that is going to be probably relevant in whatever 50 years if we're going to reach the end game and not the post-apocalyptic Mad Max world, right? So there are these kind of glitches, sort of, that, yeah, about that much of a free.
I completely, just a comment, I completely agree as well that this sort of skill of knowing how to repair and doing it in the best possible way is definitely something that is very valuable and needs to be paid. But in another sense, when I started thinking about the free mending kits, there's also a value in spreading the word or encouraging people to mend it yourself, because let's even say in textile world, the movement of visible mending is something very much I'm into it, and I know a lot of my textile peers are also into that scene, and I think we need to sort of push people to get creative as well, and let them know that there's this sort of therapy type of thing to also know how to use the needle and to fix your own jeans. Yeah, so it's always a bit of a so and so. But Peter, you also have a question.
Yeah, it's very much, I think, in line with what you were just discussing. But what I wonder, and it's just something that came up because I think it was Jirka who mentioned like grandparents who were fixing things. I can't really remember, but it triggered something with me that I see almost. It's almost like a paradox in. That makes me sound really old, but like younger generations now, where they are very aware, or at least consider themselves quite aware of these looming. What do you call it? Did you call it an apocalypse? But on the other hand, don't seem maybe even educated enough to act on that. So and that just made me think about how short it really is. So I said it makes me sound probably really old. Electronics, but also clothing and things like that. I grew up with grandmother who was still from the Netherlands, so they were not. They didn't have to. They were not poor or anything, but they were mending clothes, and my grandmother made her own clothes and things like that, and also for us, and they were pretty good. But also later on with electronics, I grew up with PCs that I assembled myself. Of course, you can still do that, but it was common. That was normal. That was actually the way to do that. And even my first Apple computer, I could replace the parts myself pretty easily. Then, however, Apple locks you out of their system by software updates, right? So you got that problem. So that's another issue, of course. And that's I have that with my phone. So I'm super careful with all my stuff. And at some point, I just can't get the latest OS, and I have to actually upgrade my phone. That's for me the main reason why I upgrade my phone. But yeah, what I'm getting at is like it seems only a very short time, at least in my lifetime, where this became a much bigger problem all of a sudden. And is that seems reversible by education, right? Like, because it does seem that the newer generations are very open to it, are just not really able to act appropriately or something on it. Does that make sense? It's not really a question, but it's more like a brain wave that I got with this.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we have all sorts of like educational programs here in like Paranduskelder, and this is what we do and we focus on. But you're right, like it's funny, but like it's not just youth, right? I think the majority of people don't see the connection between the mass consumption, mass production machinery that gives us all these cool, cheap things like this, and the climate crisis. Like there is no. There is so, like the link. It's because the systems are so complex, obviously, but like the fact that whatever these 15-euro umbrellas are ending up on the landfill has something to do with whatever loss of biodiversity, which it in the end does. It's hard. It's hard to imagine what to do. Like, yeah. So yeah, I agree about education, and yeah.
At iFixit, we've seen some success with we have a university technical writing program where we send groups of students devices and a repair kit and say, write a repair manual for this thing. And generally, we don't give them a whole lot more guidance than that. We talk to them about how to create a good repair manual, But in terms of actually taking apart the device and figuring it out, and figuring out how to change the battery in the screen or the the fan or whatever it is, they figure it out. And so I do think that it is something teachable and something learnable even without explicit teaching, maybe, and that so much of that comes from just getting into things, just getting your hands dirty.
But I think what I also think is maybe what I notice is that the more educated you are to begin with, and the more money actually you have, like at least in my, and I consider myself a bit similar, I buy really high quality. I look at what I buy, high quality clothing, and I actually repair. And it feels almost it's it's like a trap, right? So you buy fast fashion because you don't have the money, and it's like a little bit similar with other stuff that you buy. It's crappy quality, so, and then it's non-repair. So the more expensive stuff you buy, the longer it lasts. And so that's another thing with that, right? When you say you send it to universities, but yeah, it's these large groups of people that have no clue, right? Like it's and I really appreciate it, but it's about getting to the. I'm wondering if there's any information or anyone did research into that, like what groups are actually I don't want to say the worst, but are not the least aware and not really acting on it that much, and what the reasons are for that. Is it just that you don't have the money? Like there's definitely research on that. It's like the less money you have, the more of those. It's like with your diet, you eat crappier food as well, and therefore you're less healthy and so on. So I think that's kind of all related in that sense. It feels in a way as well. And then of course, if you get over a certain point, you're so poor that you have to, because you can't even buy the crap stuff anymore. So you have to come up with your own solutions. But yeah.
Yeah, I know in polls of interest in repairability scores, there's a correlation between lower income and more interest in repairability scoring. So I think you're right that there's some sort of curve there where, at a certain point it's easier just to buy new in most cases, and at a lower point it's a necessity to repair.
Yeah, but this is like I mentioned this, but I don't really picture it if this is an option like that. Such a strict policies where there is no way you can sell a $300 new laptop. There's just no way. There would be only military quality stuff that is and this is it. And you would have like you would have just like whatever 20 different sorts of laptops on the market. It's really like crazy, but this would be it. I don't know if it's something feasible. And then there is no option for you to repair. You can buy secondhand. If you don't have the money, you can buy secondhand always. This would still remain, right? And yeah, this is about tech, right? Maybe we're gonna end up with something like Fairphone, which is just you have still the middle and you just keep on upgrading it. And then if you don't have the money, you just buy the middle, and then just like as you maybe save money, and then you replace the module and you have the newest camera and so on. I don't know.
We have Michael Tusson written some good comments here, which are quite relevant, and he mentions that from a EU level research, he remembers some main points why people don't repair or rent things. One of the reasons to be that companies don't promote support with spare parts, which I think is it's very true. And there is a lack of information. People believe that the new is better, even though it might not be. 10-year-old top quality product is still better than new cheap one, etc. I think it goes really well with what Vincent just mentioned before, that there's what quite heavily lays on the shoulders of the community knowledge and the community closeness and I don't know even how to say it in English, but he has said it, confidence, community confidence, which is a very well put way of sort of also strengthening the mindset of, okay, I can actually do it, and it's something that is easy, and it might be actually fun to, rather than just go out and have a glass of wine or just spend time with friends behind the table, but to do something together in a community space. Yeah, just some comments from what we've written in the chat here. Any other questions from anybody else? I actually have a question, maybe more going towards to Nudie jeans, but also others as well. You have really worked out a perfect sort of a model that you really offer everything, and you think of the materials after they are post consumer as well, with recycling into a new material. But what would you suggest for smaller brands, like even here in Estonia, for really smaller fashion brands, and who would like to offer a service to prepare their things, but maybe their team is too small to have one person working for that? Or is it easier from your point of view, or from your experience, to maybe start with working or collaborating with repairers and skilled workers in your city? Or what would be, what could they do? Or should they just all come together and find one repair shop and say, hey, this is your free voucher, go there if you need it to get it fixed?
Well, I think maybe the easiest thing, if you want to start right now, is of course to collaborate with someone who already have that knowledge and the skills. So set up business collaborations with like local people. Now I don't remember the word of people who's working with sewing things, but I mean, that is not that difficult. Of course, it costs, but then you can also add also a cost for the customer to add into. But I think that would be an easy solution. And just to, I mean, when I talk about all of this and how it looks today, it looks like it's such a perfect solution to it, but it has also been a journey where we have sort of had to figure this out all as we go. It started off with that we had the sewing machines in the store to adjust the length of the jeans. That's why we had the sewing machines in the stores. And then we had like customers, we knew, people's friend that came in and were like, oh, but you actually have a sewing machine, could you fix these jeans? And we started to do it. So it actually started really small scale in the store without the owners really caring or knowing about this. So it grew from the shop floors because they weren't interested in it. And then we realized, okay, this is actually something that we do, then we maybe should do this more in an official way. And that was back in 2012, 2013, when we decided to call the shops repair shops, because then we was like, okay, we're actually doing this service. But it started off really small. So I can understand that it looks perfect, but it hasn't really been perfect from the beginning. And I think that if you are a small business today, you can just start with your small things, the possibilities that you have to have a local collaboration, or to decide that this garment type is the ones that we will start to offer this for. We'll start small and see how can we scale this up, all while we are learning and understanding and teaching our customers about this, and what do they want to have repaired and what do they don't care so much about. And so I think just like understanding and accepting that it's a journey and we all are learning, but to take steps and to trust the process and to dare to try, I think.
Thank you. I just noticed we're running out of time. It's 1 minute past already, and the people are saying bye already. But Elizabeth and Jiří, would you like to have maybe a last comment? Because I still have very many questions, and we can go on forever, but time is not on our side on this one.
I see a question from Preet in the chat about how to best inform 5th graders and the 8th graders about the story, and I want to recommend our video called "Don't Upgrade Your Phone Yet," which has an animation that I think would be great for that population. So I'll put a link to that in the chat. So thank you very much for organizing this. This was a great event.
Thank you
so much.
And Jiří, would you like to say the last words from Tartu?
Come visit us. We are open on some days, not all the time, but some days. On those days, come. Yeah, I thank you for having me in school. It's many interesting people I mentioned here in the chat, and all of you guys. It's cool. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, keep an eye out for the next how-to webinars. This one will be recorded and then uploaded on the Design Center website. You can share it as well and rewatch it. And big thank you from my side. And have a good evening and good day, Elizabeth, because it's still morning for you. All right, bye.